Welcome to the very first episode of the PMILOC podcast, The Hour of PM Power. I'm Tony Lumbwe and I'm your host. I could not be more excited to kick off this series with an incredible guest. So joining us today is Dr. Yomi Odedeyi, a seasoned consultant and program manager with over 25 years of experience spanning Nigeria, Canada, and the United States. Yomi specializes in helping businesses select, manage, and optimize their entire enterprise IT systems. But his story goes far beyond his professional accolades. And before entering the world of project management, Yomi was a criminal defense attorney and a financial analyst back in Nigeria. So he holds a law degree, a joint executive MBA, and a PhD in leadership. And also, as a PMP certified professional, is dedicated to empowering others through his wealth of knowledge and his very unique journey. So today, we'll explore the experiences, values, and also all the lessons that shaped Yomi into the dynamic leader that he is today. We'll also dive deep into insights on leadership, resilience, and lifelong learning. So let's get started and welcome to you, Dr. Yomi.
Thank you very much, Tony. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, it's really great to have you here. It's actually an honor. Well, we'll dive right in. Your life and your career journeys are nothing short of inspiring. So I'd like for us to start, right from the beginning. I'd like for us to talk about, in terms of role models and leadership qualities, were there any experiences or role models, from your childhood that really put this into you, all these organizational or leadership qualities in you? From a younger age.
That's a great question. And thank you for the question. I think, like many people, I imprinted on my parents, both positively and negatively. I'm a son of a Nigerian civil servant. She was a single parent. My dad left us when I was very young, and she was an incredible leader herself. She went back to get postgraduate education after I was born. So I spent my elementary school years with my grandparents, and they were very strict. My grandfather was a school headmaster, and my grandmother was a stay-at-home mom. So I learned from their feet, how to be resilient, how to cook, how to do things around the house because, they were old, and I was the kid who helped them around the house. I also credit my grandfather with my command of language and diction because when I was a kid, his eyesight was failing. And he used to be a subscriber to the Daily Times, the local newspaper in the city where we grew up in Lagos. And every day they would bring the paper. So when I came back from school, it was my job to read the newspaper to him. So he taught me how to speak, pronounce the words correctly, the cadence and English and all that. And today I credit that experience with my oratory skills, I guess. My mom was a civil servant, and she was very hardworking. When I was in when I moved to high school, she had finished her postgraduate and started her career. So we lived together, and she did her best for me. I went to a private Catholic high school in Lagos, one of the best, St. Gregory's College, where I made lifelong friends. And till today, my friends from high school are still my friends today, a lot of them. I graduated high school in 1979. So, that's a long time to people who you've known, who've grown in their own careers. I would say the lessons I learned from my mom were to be very resilient. She was someone who, anything she did it to the best. She didn't accept anything less than the best. So, for example, just in the house, she would come back and she would run her finger across the furniture if I had dusted the furniture very well. And if there was dust on her finger, there was hell to pay. So, those experiences made me to be very conscious of doing anything I do very well. Like I mentioned, I went to a Catholic secondary school, and we had Father O'Connell, who was again very demanding. He would say to you, sit up straight. Where are your manners? So that those formative years were very instrumental in everything else I did after that, and the lessons I learned there. Persistence, excellence, being resilient. Never taking um, less than the best for myself, never taking no for an answer, all came from those formative years. And of course, in my career and other parts of life, I would say I've also learned many lessons. But let me just stop there.
That's very interesting, getting to know that it's not one person or two people that actually got to shape you into who you are today, but it's actually it sounds like it's a community, and yeah, that's that. And I guess that would be my next question, in terms of the impact, that community and culture can have on a person on their path to becoming a leader in society one day. What is your view on that?
Absolutely. Culture is the unspoken mesh that, rolls around us. It governs what we say, what we don't say, what we think, and the language in which we think. So you cannot separate culture from us or us from our culture, in as much as you cannot separate a fish from the water. Culture is this invisible cloak. So fish don't know they live in water, and we don't realize the impact that our culture has on us. Like I mentioned, I had a strong family background, and anybody who has gone to Catholic secondary school knows that the priests, there's discipline and all that. But in my career, also, I've been very fortunate that I worked with people who were strong characters, who were mentors, and I learned from them. As you mentioned, my first degree was in law. And actually, the reason I studied law was because of my mother. I never wanted to be a lawyer. In fact, when I was growing up in Nigeria, we used to address judges as my lord. And in my rebellious nature, I was like, this guy is a human being like me. Why am I going to call you by God's name? So that was the only reason I didn't like law. But my mother said I wanted to be a pilot. I loved the uniforms they wore, and I had an uncle who was a pilot. So when he would wear his uniform and his scarf, that made me attracted to that profession. But my mom was not having it. She didn't want to send me to flight school. So the University of Benin was starting a law program just about the time I finished high school. And she said, you go apply for this. And I said, I don't want to be a lawyer. And she said something that I have never forgotten since that day. She said, it's a profession. You go and join this profession. And whenever the life requires those professional skills, you will always have it. Whenever there's a call for people who are having that professional skill, you will always have it. And to me, that was one of my foundations, that you always want to have a profession so that you have something you can be proud of, you have something you can use. When I finished law, I was very fortunate. I worked for Chief O. Koleosho, brilliant lawyer. He was also a guy who had very high standards. He invested a lot of money in technology in those days in his chambers. So it was in his chambers I first came across IT and fell in love with it, because he had the programmable IBM Selectric typewriters. Lawyers do a lot of documents, long documents, and all this. And we had programmed all the documents and contracts into this typewriter. And with a press of a button, it would just spit out all the 40 pages or whatever, and you just make one or two corrections, and it just,
This look like magic.
yes, it was like magic. It just fascinated me. And I took the manual and I read it and all that, and then later on I bought a computer for myself. I taught myself how to program in MS DOS, how to write macros in Microsoft Word and Excel and all of this. So the world of IT just opened my eyes, and it was like, wow, you can do all these things with technology and all that. But because I didn't want to be a lawyer, I left that profession after I left legal practice, let me say. I've always maintained my standing in the Nigerian Bar Association because I've been a member since 1985, and I can't give that up. It's part of who I am. But
For sure.
you know, leaving the law profession or the practice wasn't. I didn't even look back because at that time the firm that I worked for served a lot of big banks and big corporations, And so I knew a lot of people who I went to school with or who I'd been friends with as a youth working in the big banks and all. And I got to know some of the leaders as well. So that was how I got into financial services and got trained in accounting, got trained in financial analysis, learned how to do spreadsheets and all that. And then in 1991, the some of the guys I knew were starting a bank, Guarantee Trust Bank in Lagos. So the then deputy managing director, Mr. Tayo Aderiokun, he's now list, may his soul rest in peace. He was someone whose wife I knew. Her junior brothers were my friends, So one of the other lessons that I've used in life is networking. You need to cultivate relationships with people and invest in people. And, people, it's networking is like a bank. You have to make deposits before you can make a withdrawal. So anyway, I'd known Mrs. Adirokun since I was like in secondary school, junior secondary. And her husband was the deputy managing director of this bank. So I knew him through her. And I just went and spoke to him that, look, I want to come and work for you in the bank. And he was like, well, we're not hiring any lawyers. And I said, that's the point. I don't want to practice law. I want to be a banker. So
Oh, that's really great. All this shows once again the impact that the community has had on you, I
absolutely,
guess.
absolutely. I've been blessed that it's through those social networks and those professional networks that I've really had everything that I've had in life. Same thing when
Yeah.
I immigrated. It was through my connections that I got a job in the United States. In Canada, also, it's been through my connections that, all the things I've achieved. I've not achieved one thing by myself. I've been blessed that people who knew me recognized maybe the skill or the things I could bring to the table and asked me to bring those things to the table. So I really cherish that community, and I invest. I try to be deliberate about reaching out to people and bringing them along and serving as a mentor myself because I've been mentored by so many people.
Yeah. Very, very, very important point right there. Thanks for that. Next thing is I would like to still bring it back a bit and ask about whether you remember your very first leadership experience and what it was, how did it feel, and what did you learn from it?
Before I answer that question, I will define leadership in my own way.
Please do, please do.
A leader is someone who builds the community. So if you have a position where you're responsible for building the community and making things better, you're a leader. So in that light, my first leadership experience, I would say, was in law practice. I was promoted to head a branch of the law firm in Kano, which was in northern Nigeria. I grew up in Lagos, which is on the Atlantic coast. And I was sent off to Kano to be the head of the branch there, cultivate relationships with potential clients, and lead. We have one other attorney, and my I guess natural ebullience, my way of leadership is to carry people along and make jokes and I don't take myself seriously. I don't take them seriously, but the work we take seriously. So what I would say, the lessons I learned from that experience was that you need to, as a leader, you need to be accountable. So when we go on a call and we tell the customer we can do this, we have to send a proposal, or something. The first couple of times I let someone else do it, I didn't like the way they'd done it. And so I sat with them and walked them through. And my input was to make it to my own standard. And that's something that I have used throughout my professional life. Those leadership experiences from my early days as an attorney, and then to recent days where I'm managing large projects, large budgets, and teams of people. It's the same thing that as a leader, my job is to make things better, and I look for ways of empowering people. I'm not someone who wants to necessarily do everything by themselves. I'm not very hands-on. I try to define what I'm good at and then do those things excellently and then work with the people I'm working with to also make them excellent. So, because my experience as a leader is that the things that I achieve is the sum of what everybody achieves as the leader. It's not really possible for me to do everything. So I try to build teams and then empower them and get roadblocks out of their way. That's the way I've experienced my leadership.
No, that's really great. That's really great and inspiring too. One thing that you mentioned earlier in your speech was the influence of mentors. I'm really curious to know where, if there were any mentors in your early life. I'm talking about young Yomi. I know you did mention a few of them, but strictly on mentors, and who were the ones that had a significant impact on your development as a leader?
One of the people that really had an impact on me was, or is, because I still look up to him, is Mr. Fola Adeola. Fola Adeola was the managing director of Guarantee Trust Bank when I started working there. An accountant by profession, excellent, hardworking guy. And the funny thing that I learned from him was how to say no. When I put a proposal together, take it to him, Fola had a red pen. He would draw a line, a large line, bold line across the sheet, and put like the head of an arrow, and then write the words "no." So I put a question, exclamation mark. And why that struck me was that he wasn't saying no because he was trying to be, uncooperative or whatever. He was saying no to some of the things I put forward because they weren't up to scratch. They weren't good enough. So I looked up to him, and I still look up to him till tomorrow because he's a very successful businessman and all that. But he had high standards. When you brought a document to him, you better make sure that that document is A1, because all he would do if he looks at the first page, second page, he can just write no on it. Um, he also was a very jovial person. Even though he had very strict standards and all, he joked with everybody. And so I wouldn't say he was he didn't take me as a mentee, but I took him as a mentor. I looked up to him.
Was that a direct mentorship? Did you ask him to become your mentor,
No,
or is this something that happened organically?
it was organic. I have actually never asked anybody to be my mentor formally. What
Yeah.
I've done is that I imprint on people. So if I see someone who I like his style, or I have things to learn from him, I imprint on that person and identify that person and try to understand what how they do what they do and why they're successful. I draw my lessons from them. I haven't really had formal mentorship Um, I haven't been a formal mentee. Now, I have men, I have mentees. I serve as a mentor to several people and all that, but that's because of the experiences I've had up till today.
Absolutely. Now, my question is, as a mentor yourself, are you that strict? Do you put out the red pen and put those lines the same way that it was done to you?
Yes, but in a gentle way. The way
Okay.
I talk about it is that I have steel-toed boots, and I'll let people
Yeah.
know that if I kick you with that steel-toed boots, it will hurt. But I hardly have the opportunity to kick people because
Yeah.
what I've done with people I've mentored is really try to understand where they want to go, understand where they are at, and try to help them clear roadblocks. The other thing I would say at this point is that there's a difference between mentorship and sponsorship.
Very important.
A mentor is somebody who, speaks to you and gives you advice and all that. A sponsor is someone who speaks about you when you're not there. So if you're not in the room and there's a conversation about some of the opportunities that may arise that you qualify for, a sponsor is a person who says, "Oh, I know someone who can do that." And I have benefited from that a lot. I have benefited from being sponsored or being having doors opened for me. And so I also try these days to open doors for people and say, "Hey, I heard about this," or "Why don't you take this training?" or "Why don't I put up this um, training for you so that your doors can be open for you?" Because none of us is an island. I don't believe in the superstar. Yeah, I mean, with someone who's a very famous sprinter, yes, he crosses the line first, but for him to get there, he needs a coach, he needs teammates who
It needs
challenge
a,
him and
it
all
needs
that.
a
So
team.
that's
Yeah.
been my approach to mentoring and sponsorship.
That's really great, and I believe it is something that's worth noting because sometimes we tend to think that we can do it all on our own, but it's always important to hear it out from those that are in your position, for instance.
Yeah, you must have the capacity, you must have the skills, you must have the background to be sponsorable, because nobody's going to sponsor you if they don't believe that you can do what you can deliver the goods. Nobody's going to, because it's a risk. The person who says, "Oh, I know Tony can do this," is taking a risk. And if he's not confident, if he or she is not confident that Tony can actually do it or that Yomi can actually do it, why would they take that risk? So the one of the lessons I share with my mentees is make yourself sponsorable. You know, do you need additional qualifications? Do you need certifications? What experiences do you need to round out your profile so that you can be sponsorable?
Or maybe you need to raise your standards in the work that you deliver so that
Exactly,
it
exactly.
can be
Well,
recognized.
I hold myself. I never knowingly deliver something that I would not be proud of. If I put my name to it, it's good, at least by my own standard.
I
It might
believe
not be
I
good
believe
by
that.
somebody else's standard, but I hold myself. I'm a kind of like a perfectionist in that sense, where I hold myself to very high standards, and I want to make sure that if something is associated with my name, it is at least as good as I can make it. Of course, someone else might do better, but I'm not going to be satisfied if it's less than good.
Really great insight right there. I want to move to a second segment, which covers dreams and ambitions. And I mean, your title, your qualifications, and all of that, they speak for themselves. But growing up, did you ever envision yourself in a leadership role, or did your aspirations evolve over time?
I think it's both actually, because as a kid, I mentioned I was an only child. So as an only child, you're the leader. My um, my grandparents, doted on me and all that. But my interest in education and leadership and all of that kind of grew organically out of the environment I was. Um, I come from a family of highly educated people. The first PhD holder I ever met in my life was my uncle, Professor Ajayi Robinson. And, he was, when I was in high school, he was teaching in King's College, Lagos. And then he quit his job and went to Columbia University to do a PhD. So that was what really put that thought in my head that, you can do a PhD. And when I had the opportunity in 2017 to enroll in a doctorate program, I did that. To me, the leadership came out of the circumstances in which I found myself. So I wasn't always the most brilliant person. I always, I didn't get first class in the university and all that, but the because I held myself to high standards, the people I worked with and worked for recognized that, and they gave me the roles and responsibilities and the opportunities. Remember, my definition of leadership is someone who brings the community together, someone who makes things better. And that has always been what I love to do. If I enter a place and it's not in order or it's, disorganized and all, it doesn't sit right with me. I got to make it, structured. I got to make it, which is what leadership is really all about. You're trying to make things better. So that was kind of like distilled into me as a kid. And then coming up, I very early had roles of responsibility, head of a chambers, manager in a financial institution. Coming to America, it was like starting over. But again, because of my, I would say, hard work and also, continuous learning, I learned fast and people recognize, oh, this guy is good at this. Then they give you opportunities to shine in to enter the room, and then if you shine in the room they give you an opportunity to enter a bigger room. So that has always been a thread in my life. I've been a lifelong learner. I'm not someone who um, I can't do without learning new things, right? So I'm reading, I'm practicing. If I have a 2 hour flight to take, before the flight I know what I'm going to read or do while I'm on the flight. So when I get off the flight, I check that box off. I hardly ever watch movies on flights.
You're making me feel guilty.
I'm telling you what I do. So
I hope it imprints on me as well. So yeah.
if I have to fly like 6 hours or something, okay, I've planned, okay, I'm going to do this for the first hour. I'm going to do this for the next hour. I'm going to sleep, So I plan things. I don't like to be, you know, without a structure. I think structure is one of the things that I've taken, But again, life happens. You plan and man proposes and God disposes. But at least start with a plan. So before you get on that plane, maybe you have a stack of books that you haven't read. Say, okay, I'll read 3 chapters of this book and take that book with you. Don't turn on the movie and just read the book. So when you get off the plane, you check that box. I have read that book.
Okay. I'll do my best to apply that next time. So
I'll tell you a funny story. That was actually how I did my MBA. Because when I was in business school, the job I had then with Deloitte was always traveling. So I would leave on Sunday and come back either on Thursday or Friday. So I was always traveling. I was always on a plane. And then school was weekends. So maybe that's why I never cultivated the habit of playing games or relaxing with movies on planes or anything, because when I have the eye that, okay, I'm going to be in class on Friday evening and I'm flying back on Thursday. So that uninterrupted 2 or 3 hour flight is the best time of the week to get all my reading done, to get all my assignments done. And I've maintained that. I mean, I got my MBA in 2007, but to today, I love flying because it's uninterrupted time. Nobody can call you. No, no, nobody can interrupt you. You're just there with whatever work you have to do in the aircraft, and you get it done and get out of the plane. It makes me have a sense of satisfaction when I get things done. I'm someone who uses lists of things to do, and I love crossing things off. That, okay, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this.
Satisfying. No, for
Yes,
sure,
yes.
definitely. So you spoken about all these roles that you held, moving throughout your career, which means you had all these dreams and all these ambitions. But my question is, how do you balance pursuing those dreams and those ambitions that you have with overcoming obstacles that can pop up along the way?
That's a great question. One of the things I realized about maybe 10 years ago, and the realization has been growing, is that for me, my trajectory is made up of many different parts. So if you take someone who's like a famous doctor, he graduated from medical school and has been a doctor all his life, or someone who it's been one thing. I'm not like that. I am somebody who has many things going on simultaneously, and so what I've learned to do rather, is to be compartmentalized and to derive joy in each of the buckets that I deal with. So I have a bucket for family, I have a bucket for my 9 to 5 job, I have a bucket for my volunteering, I have so many buckets. I have a bucket for academic work. And so it's a matter of being deliberate about putting my time and energy and focus on each of those buckets so that I achieve what I want in each of them. So for me, it's not like, okay, I'm an IT project manager and going to be um, only doing IT project management. I'm doing IT project management. I'm doing my role as a parent. If I need to support my son, I'll give him time and go meet him where he is and support him. If I need to support my wife, maybe she's traveling. I'm very fortunate that my 9 to 5 job is like 60, 80% remote. So anywhere I have internet connection, I can do my work. So that again helps because I don't have to necessarily be in an office at 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock every day, Monday to Friday. So I can parcel my time and energy among all the various things I have to do. So in a typical day, I might be in meetings all day long, and then at 4 o'clock, I have an academic interview with someone who is going to contribute to a book I'm writing. At 8 o'clock, I'm doing this. So from the time I get out of bed till the time I go to bed, I've got something or the other doing.
I like the part where you put, where you have all these different buckets and really put focus on each one of them, because in today's world we tend to mix things up quite often, and we don't even know how to prioritize anymore. So that's definitely that's a big takeaway from this answer. I'd like to talk about defining moments that shaped your career, and also emphasize on your leadership philosophy. So I liked your definition of who a leader is. Someone that brings the community together. So, in your upbringing, was there a specific moment or a specific challenge that taught you resilience or problem solving skills that later on became essential in your career? Is there a specific moment where something happened, and that was really a key moment that taught you
Yes, of course. There've been challenges all along.
a specific
One
one, like
one that
the
I
moment.
one that I remember very
Yeah.
well was when I went to America. When I first went to the United States from Nigeria, it was with the promise of a job from um, company that I had worked for in Nigeria, an American company in their Nigerian subsidiary, and they promised me a job in the US. So I went to the US with that promise, and it turned out that it didn't work out. And I had told everybody in Nigeria that I was moving to America for a job. So how do you go back on that?
Oh wow.
So that
That's a tough
that
one.
was tough, but what was interesting to me is that I was telling, so of course, people in your community and all. I knew people who were in the States who we'd known each other from way, way back in Nigeria. So one of them, Biola Fayemi, he's an electronics engineer. He was working for Goldleaf Technologies at that time, which is a software company. And he knew my interests and abilities in computers and all that. So I told him, I called him and I told him, oh, look, these guys messed me up. They promised me a job and now, and he said, you know what? There's a vacancy in my company. Why don't you come and interview for it? I said, me in a software company? He said, yes, I know you. I know you can do this job. So I went and interviewed with Virginia Orr. Virginia is still my friend till today on LinkedIn, and we hit it off. And she said, well, that she liked me and she thought I could do the job, and that I had to come see her boss, Gary Peterson. So I went to their office in South Georgia, Valdosta, Georgia. No, Hahira, Georgia. Hahira, which is a small town near Valdosta. And I met with Gary and we talked and he said, when can you start? And I said, right now. And he said, sit down.
So all this happened while just after you got denied the previous
Yes.
opportunity.
Yes.
Oh
After
wow.
I lost that opportunity, I was telling my friends that, look, I lost this opportunity. I'm looking for another one. And this guy said, look, we have an opportunity here in my company. Why don't you come and talk to them? So I traveled and talked to them. And my answer that day and Gary's response, I've used it up till now. He said, when can you start? Normally people will say, well, I'll start in 2 weeks' time or this and that. No, I said, right now. So, and his response was, okay, sit down and do the work. So, anytime I apply for any job or anything, they say, when can you start? I say, immediate. That is that's the way I approach it. That I'll tell you, because, somebody might change their mind. If you say you're coming back in 2 weeks' time, what if things change in 2 weeks' time? So, I never say 2 weeks' time. I say, right now, I'll do it today. So, so that opportunity with Gold Leaf Technologies was pivotal because it showed me that, the hobbies and the VB programming and the logic and stuff I knew about IT was actually valuable. It was able to help me get an apartment, help me get a car, help me, with my family and all that. And so I realized that, oh man, this IT thing, and I loved it. It appealed to my sense of logic. It appealed to the ego, my ego, because my degree was not in IT, but in law, and yet here I was doing IT like the people who did computer science and engineering and all that. So I felt proud that you can do it. So I did that for several years and got all kinds of certifications in Oracle and Unix systems administration and database administration and all that. And then the other pivotal thing for me was my wife's insistence that I should go to business school. She said, "Look, you're doing all these things, and you're not an engineer. Just go to business school." So I was like, "Okay, I'll go to business school." So I went to business school and got an MBA, and that again did two things. It opened my head, my vision. and it gave me opportunities to go into project management to expand my horizons. I think the third turning point for me was when I realized that, okay, like I mentioned, that I actually have several buckets. I'm not going to have one bucket. And then I did like an inventory of what I wanted and what motivated me and all that. And I realized that, well, as a lifelong learner, the bucket that I was missing was my PhD. So that was what made me go and get a PhD. And today, I have that bucket. I'm a member of the Academy of Management. I volunteer to review peer articles. I'm a member of the International Leadership Association. I'm contributing to a book they're publishing, and I hope, or let me say, wish, because I haven't really put a plan to it, that would actually be my retirement. That when I've gotten tired of working as a project manager, I'd go into academia, and I like the intellectual challenge of it. Um, so those were turning points that really made me go within and say, okay, what do I do? I can't go back and undo yesterday. I have to go forward. How do I find the way forward? And then doors opened and I walked through the doors.
That's nothing short of inspiring, I must
Thank
say.
you.
Very, very, very deep, and yeah, those three key moments as you elaborated each one of them. I guess each one happened at a different point in your career or in
Yeah, and I
your
think there will be more, because
yeah,
life is not static. So I'm looking forward to
absolutely.
other pivotal moments that will come.
Yeah. So talking about success in this leadership position, how do you define success as a leader and as a project manager? And I guess that definition has changed or has evolved over time and over your career. So how has it evolved and changed? The definition of success in leadership and in project management.
I've always been someone who's intrinsically motivated. I look around. I see people I want to model myself after, but really my motivation is intrinsic. And so my definition of success also is intrinsic. That if I feel that I've done something well and done it to my standard, I'm satisfied. And I think that also relates to the fact that people say, jack of all trades, master of none. I don't subscribe to that. I'm a jack of many trades and master of many trades. So my goal is to master the trades that I go into, which also means that I'm careful what I agree to do. I'm careful what I say no a lot. I mentioned that Mr. Foladeola taught me how to say no. I say no when I need to. Let me not say a lot because I often say yes. I like saying yes, but I also say no to some things. And I've found that when I don't follow my intuition to say no, I regret it. So now I try to be more intuitive. I look at the facts and all, but if my intuition says you should say no to this thing, I just say no and I move on. Um, I don't regret it because I can't go back and change yesterday. So to answer your question about how I define success, how I define success is that I'm deliberate about what I am doing. So as a project manager, success, of course, has an objective metric. Was the project completed on budget, on time? Did you have a risk log that has all the risk identified and the mitigants, and you communicated, and you have your closeout documents, and you can get technical as a project manager about all the things that the PMBOK and the profession requires. That is one. But in addition to that, not as a replacement, in addition to that, I also want to define my success that, okay, was it something I enjoyed doing? Was it a project that I felt satisfied? Did it they didn't meet my standards.
So on a more personal level, basically.
Absolutely. So even with the other things I do, like with my um, family, okay, what is success in a family setting? Is it that you're healthy, you have healthy, productive relationships with your kids? Do you make time to go on vacation? So we're in February now. My wife and I have planned when we'll go on vacation in the summer. She's going to Lome, and I've planned to be with her on that trip. I made time to go see my son, see my daughter, try to maintain and repair those relationships because they're important to me. Then on the academic side, okay, what's my definition of success? One was that I completed my dissertation excellently well. Um, I was very proud when the librarian, uh, well, he skimmed it. He didn't read all 300 pages of it, but he skimmed it, and he said to me, "Wow, you did a lot of work." And I said, "Yes, that I put it to my standard. I did the work thoroughly to my standard." So, whether it's quantitative methodology, qualitative methodology, I am good in both. And that was what was driving me about, because getting a doctorate degree wasn't really about, you know, getting a promotion at work. Even many of the people I work with, unless they look at my LinkedIn profile, they don't even know that I have a PhD. But because my academics was self-driven, I wanted it for myself. I drove myself to do it thoroughly. And um, when people recognize the high quality and the value I put into it and express that to me, that is very satisfying. So my definition of success is it comes from within. You know, I'm not
It's personal.
I'm not a millionaire. I don't have a lot of cash to spray around.
We never know.
Well, maybe I win the lottery, or some of my
Exactly.
investments, will do very well. But what I'm trying to say is that for me, that measure of success is intrinsic. It's when, I look at my wife, I see her face. "Oh, what's wrong?" Trying to be supportive. "Okay, tell me about your day and all this." Even though I may not uh, want to listen, I force myself to listen. That time with her is valuable because she needs to express herself and I need to express myself to her as well. So invest for me, the success is, at the end of the day, have I invested in each bucket? Have I done something to move the needle in each of those buckets? Because I have many buckets.
Once again, it goes back to, like I said, I really like the thought process behind having those buckets and making sure that each one of them is, whatever needs to be done is accomplished as it should be in each one of them. And I guess that's how you would probably define success based on each bucket. So that's really that's once again good insight. Um, the most important leadership lesson that you've learned in your career, what would it be?
The most important, there are many important lessons, but I think one
Which
of
we just want
one
one.
of the one of the things I would mention in this context is that a leader, there are different kinds of leadership, let me say. So there's my type of the communal. There are other types, but I think a leader must be able to adapt to situations. You cannot, to me, you cannot be successful with only one leadership style because situations are dynamic. So what you need is a toolkit that lets you adapt to situations. You need, of course, the communication skills. You have to know how to communicate. You have to know how to read a room, how to read people. You have to know when to say and when not to say, and what to say and what not to say, which again comes back to the um, emotional intelligence and being able to read the room, that, or read the person you're with, that would this be appropriate? So I find myself these days, holding my tongue. and, which is strange for me because I'm a lawyer. Lawyers like to talk. You can see in the last several minutes we've been talking. I love to talk, but
Well, it's yeah.
one of the things I'm learning is that part of leadership is listening. Don't talk so fast. Listen. Try to, as Stephen Covey says, seek to understand, then to be understood. In other words, when you're having a conversation, you're listening, trying to understand what that person is saying, trying to understand the even the unspoken part. And especially these days when we use virtual meeting platforms and all that. So I look at people's demeanor, I look at people body language. And after the meeting, I might send a message to the person and say, hey, what was up? You looked disconnected in that meeting and all. And that also makes me very aware when I'm in virtual meetings, what my demeanor is, what I'm projecting, consciously or unconsciously. I try to make sure that I have the energy and people feed off of that. So it's not one moment of learning; it's many moments, and it's lifelong because I'm sure if you come back in 2035 and talk to me, uh, God willing, we're all still alive by then.
Oh, you will.
The things, the things that I would say would not be what I'm saying now. If we had talked in 2015, for example, I didn't know some of the things I know now as a leader. So we have to keep on learning and adapting.
That's a good point. And talking about learning and adapting, you have moved from a myriad of different companies, I guess, or organizations rather, because you between volunteering and attending an academic institution or even moving in your professional work. So you must have navigated a lot of different corporate cultures, right? And I believe that these changes bring challenges to your values. So my question now is how do you manage to, or what do you do to successfully navigate all these different corporate cultures while staying true to your
That's
values?
a good question. Initially, well, not even initially, up to now. It's just that I mask it a little better now. My and I'm just going to say a bad word. My tolerance for bullshit is very low. So when initially in my earlier days, I was the kind of person who, if my boss told me what I thought was bullshit, I put it back on. I dropped my letter of resignation. I just walk out. So I didn't care because I always believed that I had the skill and I'll find another job and all that. I've never been afraid to get fired or to fire my employer. Um, but these days I'm older and wiser and a little bit more reticent in expressing my negative opinion of somebody. So I put up with a little bit more bullshit, so to use a bad word. But the answer to your question is you have to stand for something, otherwise, you will fall for anything. As a leader, you must know your values. You must have an intrinsic compass. There's a book I would recommend to anyone who wants to read it, Bill George, and it's The North Star by Bill George. I'll check the reference later and provide it to you so you can add it to the podcast notes. And what I took away from that book was that Bill said you have to be as a leader, you must stand within, you must know what your own values are. Because if you don't know, then you can be led astray. But if you know what your values are, that this is what I stand for high ethics, I stand for compassion, I stand for truth. You whatever your value system is, whether it's based in a religion or a faith tradition or whatever, you must have that. Because if you don't, then people can suggest things that sound nice and you carry along because you don't have a frame of reference, which is why I said stand for something. Now, the other thing I will add is you have to constantly learn and reevaluate. Are the things you stand for um, still valid for you? Are they working for you? And if they're not, then what is the change that you need to make, which is part of being a lifelong learner? You can't say, that, oh, this is the only way I know how to do something, and you stick with it for 40 years, whether or not it's not working. You must be self reflective. One of the things that I do, I've done it for many years, I journal. And sometimes I read something that I journaled in 2010 and it's still resonant today. Or I read something that I journaled many years ago and I say, oh, okay, that I need to change that. So being um, uh, your own values, being deterministic about your values. I think that's the right word. You have to know what your values are because when things come up, it is those values that you will measure against. When temptation comes, when you have to, for instance, fire somebody, that works for you, it against what standard are you measuring it? Have you given them every opportunity to change? Have you documented what they have done? Do they know where they have fallen short? Have you given them an opportunity to change before you get to the point where you say, okay, you know what? I can't work with this person anymore. You have to leave the company. So those are some of the things that I would say I have in my toolkit. Now, I'm not perfect. I sometimes will, get very upset with somebody and use my steel-toed boots on them. But generally, I try to be reflective and say, okay, how does this thing I'm doing, is it consonant with my values? Because when you're sitting by yourself, it's just you and your creator or your God or whatever um, internally motivates you. If you look in the mirror, you're not going to see another person. It is you that you're going to see. So that is why my motivation is intrinsic. My values are based on what I believe is good for all. If I would characterize my leadership comes from a servant leadership perspective. That is, I feel I can contribute by lifting others up. I feel I can contribute by serving others. I feel I can contribute by empowering others. So, against that, does this empower others? Does this give the team a better chance? I hardly do anything. Although, if you look at my LinkedIn, for instance, you'll see many, many companies ventures that I own, projects that I'm involved in. Hardly any of them is just me. No, it's a team. And we work together to make something that is bigger than each of us individually.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. Self reflection. That's one thing that I picked. One word that I
Thank you.
picked
Yes,
from
you
your answer.
summarized it well.
Very, very important. Very, very important. So the fourth segment, which is the last one, is about um, your leadership philosophy and also the legacy thereof.
Oh my God,
So
do I have a
uh,
legacy?
your,
I'm too young for a legacy. But in
well,
fact,
your aspiration to so
yeah,
to say the least.
I
So
hear you,
your
and actually, it's not true. Everybody has a legacy. You're leaving
yeah,
something.
for sure.
You're leaving footsteps in the sands of time. And what I reflected on in that regard was, when I'm gone, I want people to be able to say he was a good guy. He influenced me positively in whatever way that they perceive that I influenced them. Like I mentioned, I'm deliberate about goals and things that I put into the various buckets. So I measure myself by those. So when I say, I serve right now as president of the PMI Ontario chapter. the things I want to do to set down so that when I'm no longer president, those things can be looked back on and people can say, oh, it was when Yomi was president that they did this. And so I derive a lot of joy from that. So by making deliberate choices and being able to check off those things on the list, then I can say that's my legacy. My legacy is the list of the to-do list that has more completed items than uncompleted items. I hope that answers your question.
It definitely does. Another point that you touched on earlier was lifelong learning. What advice do you have for people who feel that it's too late to pursue further education or enhance their credentials or their leadership skills or or even changing their careers? I mean, you went from starting off as a lawyer potentially to get into information and technology and then boosting it up with an MBA and now a PhD. What's next? So
I think that you have to be a lifelong learner because that's the only way that I know to be. I have a friend who, uh, has a degree and working in an organization that she doesn't like. And I try to persuade her that, look, just quit this and go do something else or go do this. And um, not everybody is able to have that. I think it's courage. I would describe it as the courage to make drastic changes. I find it easy to make drastic changes. In fact, my wife says I'm too risk tolerant. She's risk averse, so we get along well together because our approaches balance the risk. But to answer your question, I would say to someone who is coming up, let me say, look for opportunities to learn. Look for in the job, whatever job you're doing, what can I learn and contribute? How can I grow better on this? Okay, so maybe you are a sales and marketing guy. What do you know about the inventory system? How does the raw materials translate into the finished products? Maybe you are in engineering. What do you know about product design? What do you know about color theory? Maybe you are in some branch of art. What do you know about human psychology? What do you know about? So, in other words, I advise people be curious about life because life comes at you from different directions. When I was a kid, there was nothing like climate change. Today, you cannot deny the reality of climate change. And so, what do you know about it? What can you learn? Look for opportunities to learn. And even if it's not directly related, so some people say to me when I say that, they say, oh, I will only learn things that people pay me to learn. In other words, why should I waste my time learning this if it's not going to have a direct financial impact on my well being? And I'm like, well, that may be true that if you learned about the vagus nerve and how it relates to the emotions and the things you do in your body, how it connects your mind to your body, it may not help you on your job as an accountant, but it will help you as a human being because now you recognize that, okay, there's actually a biological uh, underpinning to my emotions. There's something that connects my gut. So when people say they have a gut feeling, research is showing today that it's actually true that there's a connection between the gut and the mind. Now, if you know that, that can color your interactions with others, or you can use it to your own benefit that when you're feeling angry or you're feeling euphoric, where is that coming from? Those learnings are applicable in many different ways. Like I say to young people, whatever you do, do it well. Today, if you give me a 60-page contract, I'm not afraid of reading it because, I know law. I know, how to do that. Of course, I'm not going to.
You know what to look for.
Yes, I'm not going to sit down today and read the 60 pages. I'm going to upload it to ChatGPT and tell it to summarize it. So, but, but I'm not afraid to do those things by myself because I know it. I was in a group, and one of the requirements from the group was that you were offered this package of contracts for some thousands of dollars. And I'm like, forget it, I'm not going to pay that. I'll do it myself. So, because I learned how to do that, or
Yes.
it applies across board. And I also would say try and learn things that are outside your realm. So if you, for instance, are a French teacher, learn music or learn woodworking or learn something that, or like you, Tony, you're an engineer, learn how to draw art or learn, things that are tangential or different because you bring all those things back and the whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts. So for me, that's one of the lessons I try to pass on to my children, that you know knowledge is wasted. So if you learn, for example, how to plant um, seeds and nurture them to grow and all that, you learn patience. You learn that if you don't handle the plants well, it will not survive, it will not grow strong. You learn that even if you do all the things well, stuff can happen and the outcome of the harvest will not be good. So life itself is a book. So if you're alive, you must learn.
Amazing. Amazing. Really, really good, good point. And actually, I would go back to the story that you told where you were going to interview for a certain job and you got hired for one that required a skill that you had learned as a hobby, but which served you and helped you pivoting around your career. So yeah, definitely, life is a book, and we need to carry on and keep learning. So that's really really appreciated. With that said, I'd like to thank you, Yomi. Thank you very much for sharing your incredible journey
Thank you.
and also all these invaluable insights with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing about your experiences and also learning from your
It's my
wisdom.
pleasure. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Much, much appreciated. And to our listeners and viewers, thank you all for tuning into this episode of the PMILOC podcast, The Hour of the PM Power. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe and share it with others who might find it inspiring. And until next time, keep striving for excellence and embracing the power of leadership.